While he waited in Temple Bar, McCoy dodged a banana peel with gentle pushes of his toe from the path to the gutter. Fellow might damn easy get a nasty fall there, coming along tight in the dark. The gates of the drive opened wide to give egress to the vice-regal cavalcade. "Even money," Lenehan said, returning. "I knocked against bantam lions in there, going to back a bloody horse someone gave him that hasn't an earthly. Through here." They went up the steps and under Merchant's Arch. A dark-backed figure scanned books on the hawker's cart. "There he is," Lenehan said. "Wonder what he's buying," McCoy said, glancing behind. "Leopoldo, or The Bloom is on the Rye," Lenehan said. "He's dead nuts on sales," McCoy said. "I was with him one day and he bought a book from an old one in Liffey Street for 2 bob. There were fine plates in it worth double the money. There's stars and the moon and comets with long tails. Astronomy was about." Lenehan laughed. "I'll tell you a damn good one about comets' tails," he said. "Come over in the sun." They crossed to the metal bridge and went along Wellington Quay by the river wall. Master Patrick Aloysius Dignam came out of Mangan's, late Ferrenbach's, carrying 1.5 pounds of pork steaks. "There was a long spread out at Glen Cree Reformatory," Lenehan said eagerly. "The annual dinner, boiled shirt affair. The Lord Mayor was there, Val Dillon it was, and Sir Charles Cameron, and Dan Dawson spoke, and there was music. Bartell D'Arcy sang, and Benjamin Dollard—" "I know," McCoy broke in. My missus sang there once. Did she?" Lenehan said. A card, "Unfurnished Apartments," reappeared on the window sash of No. 7 Eccles Street. He checked his tail a moment, but broke out in a wheezy laugh. "But wait till I tell you," he said. "Delahunt of Camden Street had the catering, and yours truly was chief bottle washer. Bloom and the wife were there. Lashings of stuff we put up, port wine and sherry and curacoa, to which we did ample justice. Fast and furious it was. After liquids came solids. Cold joints galore and mince pies." "I know," McCoy said. "The year the missus was there—" Lenehan linked his arm warmly. "But wait till I tell you," he said. "We had a midnight lunch, too, after all the jollification, and when we sallied forth it was blue o'clock the morning after the night before. Coming home, it was a gorgeous winter's night on the Featherbed Mountain. Bloom and Chris Cullinan were on one side of the car, and I was with the wife on the other. We started singing glees and duets, lo, the early beam of morning. And she was well primed with a good load of Delahunt's port under her belly band. Every jolt the bloody car gave, I had her bumping up against me. Hell's delights! She has a fine pair, God bless her, like that." He held his caved hands a cubit from him, frowning. "I was tucking the rug under her and settling her boa all the time. Know what I mean?" His hands moulded ample curves of air. He shut his eyes tight in delight, his body shrinking, and blew a sweet chirp from his lips. "Oh, the lad stood to attention anyhow," he said with a sigh. "She's a gamey mare and no mistake. Bloom was pointing out all the stars and the comets in the heavens to Chris Cullinan and the Jarvey, the Great Bear and Hercules and the Dragon and the whole jing-bang lot. But by God, I was lost, so to speak, in the Milky Way. He knows them all, faith. At last she spotted a weeny-weeshy one miles away. 'And what star is that, Poldy?' says she. By God, she had Bloom cornered. 'That one, is it?' said Chris Cullinan. 'Sure, that's only what you might call a pinprick. By God, he wasn't far wide of the mark.'" Lenehan stopped and leaned on the river wall, panting with soft laughter. "I'm weak," he gasped. McCoy's white face smiled about it at instants and grew grave. Lenehan walked on again. He lifted his yachting cap and scratched his hind head rapidly. He glanced sideways in the sunlight at McCoy. He's a cultured all-round man, Bloom is, he said seriously. He's not one of your common or garden, you know. There's a touch of the artist about old Bloom. Mr. Bloom turned over idly pages of The Awful Disclosures of Maria Monk, then of Aristotle's masterpiece. Crooked, botched print, plates, infants cuddled in a ball in blood-red wombs like livers of slaughtered cows. Lots of them like that at this moment all over the world, all butting with their skulls to get out of it. Child born every minute somewhere. Mrs. Purefoy. He laid both books aside and glanced at the third, Tales of the Ghetto by Leopold von Sacher-Masoch. That I had, he said, pushing it by. The shopman let 2 volumes fall on the counter. Them are 2 good ones, he said. Onions of his breath came across the counter out of his ruined mouth. He bent to make a bundle of the other books, hugged them against his unbuttoned waistcoat, and bore them off behind the dingy curtain. On O'Connell Bridge, many persons observed the grave deportment and gay apparel of Mr. Dennis J. McGeaney, Professor of Dancing, etc. Mr. Bloom, alone, looked at the titles. Fair Tyrants by James Lovebirch. I know the kind that is. Had it? Yes. He opened it. I thought so. A woman's voice behind the dingy curtain. Listen. The man. No, she wouldn't like that much. Got her at once. He read the other title. Sweets of Sin. More in her line. Let us see. He read where his finger opened. All the dollar bills her husband gave her were spent in the stores on wondrous gowns and costliest frillies. For him. For Raoul. Yes. This. Here. Try. Her mouth glued on his in a luscious, voluptuous kiss, while his hands felt for the opulent curves inside her déshabillé. Yes, take this, the end. You are late, he spoke hoarsely, eyeing her with a suspicious glare. The beautiful woman threw off her sable-trimmed wrap, displaying her queenly shoulders and heaving embonpoint. An imperceptible smile played around her perfect lips as she turned to him calmly. Mr. Bloom read again, The beautiful woman. Warmth showered gently over him, cowing his flesh. Flesh yielded amply amid rumpled clothes, whites of eyes swooning up. His nostrils arched themselves for prey. Melting breast ointments. For him. For Raoul. Armpits oniony sweat. Fish-gluey slime. Her heaving embonpoint. Feel, press, crished, sulphur dung of lions. Young, young. An elderly female, no more young, left the building of the Courts of Chancery, King's Bench, Exchequer and Common Pleas, having heard in the Lord Chancellor's Court the case in lunacy of Potterton, in the Admiralty Division the summons ex parte motion of the owners of the Lady Cairns versus the owners of the bark Mona in the Court of Appeal reservation of judgment in the case of Harvey versus the Ocean Accident and Guarantee Corporation. Phlegmy coughs shook the air of the bookshop, bulging out the dingy curtains. The shopman's uncombed grey head came out, and his unshaven, reddened face, coughing. He raked his throat rudely, puked phlegm on the floor. He put his boot on what he had spat, wiping his sole along it, and bent, showing a raw-skinned crown, scantily haired. Mr. Bloom beheld it. Mastering his troubled breath, he said, "I'll take this one." The shopman lifted eyes bleared with old rheum. "Sweets of sin," he said, tapping on it. "That's a good one." The lackey by the door of Dillon's auction rooms shook his handbell twice again and viewed himself in the chalked mirror of the cabinet. Dilly Daedalus, loitering by the curbstone, heard the beats of the bell, the cries of the auctioneer within. 4 and 9, those lovely curtains, 5 shillings, cosy curtains, selling new at 2 guineas, any advance on 5 shillings, going for 5 shillings. The lackey lifted his handbell and shook it. Barang! Bang of the last lap bell spurred the half-mile wheelmen to their sprint. J. A. Jackson, W. E. Wiley, A. Monroe, and H. T. Gahan, their stretched necks wagging, negotiated the curve by the college library. Mr. Daedalus, tugging a long moustache, came round from Williams Row. He halted near his daughter. "It's time for you," she said. "Stand up straight for the love of the Lord Jesus," Mr. Daedalus said. "Are you trying to imitate your Uncle John, the cornet player, head upon shoulder? Melancholy God!" Dilly shrugged her shoulders. Mr. Daedalus placed his hands on them and held them back. "Stand up straight, girl," he said. "You'll get curvature of the spine. Do you know what you look like?" He let his head sink suddenly down and forward, hunching his shoulders and dropping his underjaw. "Give it up, father," Dilly said. "All the people are looking at you." Mr. Daedalus drew himself upright and tugged again at his moustache. "Did you get any money?" Dilly asked. "Where would I get money?" Mr. Daedalus said. "There's no one in Dublin would lend me 4p." "You got some," Dilly said, looking in his eyes. "How do you know that?" Mr. Daedalus asked, his tongue in his cheek. Mr. Kernan, pleased with the order he had booked, walked boldly along James's Street. "I know you did," Dilly answered. "Were you in the Scotch House now?" "I was not then," Mr. Daedalus said, smiling. "Was it the little nuns taught you to be so saucy?" "Here." He handed her a shilling. "See if you can do anything with that," he said. "I suppose you got 5. Dilly said. "Give me more than that." "Wait a while," Mr. Daedalus said, threateningly. "You're like the rest of them, are you? An insolent pack of little bitches since your poor mother died. But wait a while. You'll all get a short shrift and a long day from me. Low blackguardism. I'm going to get rid of you. Wouldn't care if I was stretched out stiff. He's dead. The man upstairs is dead." He left her and walked on. Dilly followed quickly and pulled his coat. "Well, what is it?" he said, stopping. The lackey rang his bell behind their backs. "Barang! Curse your bloody blatant soul!" Mr. Daedalus cried, turning on him. The lackey, aware of comment, shook the lolling clapper of his bell, but feebly. "Bang!" Mr. Daedalus stared at him. "Watch him," he said. "It's instructive. I wonder, will he allow us to talk?" "You got more than that, father," Dilly said. "I'm going to show you a little trick," Mr. Daedalus said. "I'll leave you all where Jesus left the Jews. Look, there's all I have. I got 2 shillings from Jack Power, and I spent 2p for a shave for the funeral." He drew forth a handful of copper coins nervously. "Can't you look for some money somewhere?" Dilly said. Mr. Daedalus thought and nodded. "I will," he said gravely. "I looked all along the gutter in O'Connell Street. I'll try this one now." "You're very funny," Dilly said, grinning. "Here," Mr. Daedalus said, handing her 2 pennies. "Get a glass of milk for yourself and a bun or something. I'll be home shortly." He put the other coins in his pocket and started to walk on. The vice-regal cavalcade passed, greeted by obsequious policemen out of Parkgate. "I'm sure you have another shilling," Dilly said. The lackey banged loudly. Mr. Daedalus, amid the din, walked off, murmuring to himself with a pursing, mincing mouth, gently, "Oh, the little nuns! Nice little things! Oh, sure they wouldn't do anything! Oh, sure they wouldn't really! Is it little Sister Monica?"